Hey everybody. Giving you, okay, I'm sorry, I'm wearing this like crazy hat because I promised my friend that I would do a video wearing his hat. So here we go. This is my notes. It is too long and we have to keep these videos short in order to upload them on YouTube. But the state's closing arguments, it was too long, number one. Number two is, let's start off with the fact that he spent a considerable amount of time talking about basically that Adnan was provided with a passionate and vigorous defense, but the evidence was overwhelming at the trial, quote unquote. He did it. The state responsibly did do justice, and the state cannot bend justice to what's fashionable. That your decision, Judge, a couple of years ago was consistent, and let's keep that decision in place to restore a bit of faith in the system. The defendant has been treated fairly, justly. What is popular is not always just. And then he said that he had 4 questions or 4 issues he was going to respond, but I could never follow along because he didn't seem like he was going along a formula. However, listen, the guy, he fought it out. And he was more like a typical defense attorney because he was on the defense. So he spent a long time going through the case at trial and going through the facts at trial. Then he also spent a long time going through the phone records, and still, he still just couldn't get to the point where he agreed that something was wrong with the records, even though both experts had different opinions as to why. And he ended that section with the reliability of the records were confirmed. I'm sorry, I'm switching around a little, forgive me. But, okay, so staying on topic, he actually mentioned Billy Murphy and Irwin and all these great lawyers that everybody in Maryland and Baltimore particularly know about, and he included in there Christina Gutierrez. To me, he was overdoing it. It didn't seem sincere. It never ever seems sincere when a prosecutor touts the talents and the skill of a defense attorney. I'm sorry. So he says to the judge that both the state and the defense presented admirable cases. He called Christina Gutierrez tenacious, meticulous, and frustrating to the state. He had summary tables. One summary table, consisted of things that Christina Gutierrez consistently challenged, that she questioned it through letters or what have you. She was constantly challenging the prosecution during the time of the trial. They also did a chart of the motion practice. Motions that she made were substantive and generic, meaning some particular issue comes up and we have to do a motion, and some stuff is generic boilerplate stuff. They also did a summary table of separate correspondence and visits to Adnan Syed by either herself or the law clerk. And they spent a lot of time talking about how Christina challenged the cell tower evidence, and that, in fact, she was one of the first attorneys to ever challenge that type of evidence. And she was so good and she was so coveted as a lawyer. Still, the people at that trial presented overwhelming evidence of guilt. I think what was also interesting was that the state said that Christina Gutierrez basically created this script on how to attack cell phone evidence, and that script is still followed by defense attorneys like Justin Brown today. Vignarajah reminded us at least reminded me, I'm sorry, many of you probably know all this, but just so many of the horrid details of the murder, including statements that Adnan allegedly made, kill that, BITCH, and just things such as that he was possessive, jealous, overprotective. She also reminded us a lot about Hayes' diary, which I really forgot about, and things that, again, that the case was so overwhelming that an alibi evidence would not have made a difference, and that then he spent a long time married to this issue of a note Christina Gutierrez made, an undated note saying, how did Adnan get into Hayes' car? And that seemed to be significant to him. At some point, he asked the court to rely on the appellant and appellee's briefs. So basically, he was saying to the court, don't listen to just what's been happening here over the last week, but you can go outside this record and go into the briefs. And so the judge interrupted, just saying, oh, is that what you're asking me to do? And so he said yes. Okay, so that was just the only question by the judge. He said, okay, so he spent a lot of time talking about the whole Brady violation, the discovery violation, and he was saying that there was no merit to that. And I don't think that whole Brady issue still doesn't, to me, he still can get a new trial, whether that's decided upon or not. He showed, which I thought was a great visual, that Christina Gutierrez's analysis of the cell phone evidence. And he suggested this interesting point. So the document that was entered into evidence that was cut off, there was like the incoming calls cut off or the dates cut off. There's two sections cut off. And he suggested it could have been because Christina Gutierrez, it was a photocopy that was cut off and that perhaps she did have the original copies. He says that the documents were always readily available to her. That at some point he said maybe she didn't have everything, but she had everything available to her. Okay, so they spoke a lot about the he spoke about the first post-conviction proceeding, and that oh, okay, this was interesting. So he spent a little time talking about Urich, and that he said, which, he was just pointing out the timeline, is that when Asia called Urich, it's not like Urich knew, oh, this is the woman on Serial, or this is the person who's been in the press. He did not know who she was at that time. So he did not know the significance of Asia. That's what he argued. And that, again, this issue of whether Asia was pressured by the family or not. He said, let's see. I'm sorry, forgive me. I don't think that note makes sense, so I'm going to move on. So, okay, so I told you about what he did with the phone records. And then, so I made this note because, and I always say this, he literally, and I don't use that word often, but dissected every single argument and then found his whole new way to look at this. And what I think that he did well was that he talked so much about the trial and talked so much about the evidence at trial, which is tough it's tough to hear because a young girl died. So I think that was issue. He gets to the alibi witness at some point, and he said that Asia's offer was risky and that put yourself in the shoes of Christina Gutierrez. And he says, okay, so this is interesting. He says, Adnan Syed says there were notes where Adnan says he gave the March 1st letter by Asia to Christina Gutierrez a few days later. Now, I thought this was big because a few days after March 1st, Christina Gutierrez was not his lawyer. In fact, he didn't. Right. So what the options are is A, he didn't give her the letter, he held on to it, or B, he gave it to another lawyer that was representing him in March of 99, or he gave the letter to her later. He went through the March 2nd letter exhaustingly, where he parsed out every single line. Some points that he made was saying that she mentions third period, and when she testified, she testified at trial that during that time, third period, she did not have a third period during that time of her life. She did not have a third period on March 2nd. She got out of second period because she had that purple pass. And when she says, oh, the other day, Monday, and why haven't you told anyone? Again, he's trying to set up the timeline that how could Adnan Syed have told anyone when the letter was just written. I don't know, he doesn't address that Jawan Gordon's statement too well. And okay, let's see. I'm sorry, I have to rush this because these videos are too long. So, okay, this is all right. And I think Susan and Rabia and other people will explain this better than I'm explaining it, because finally he seems to get to this point of saying that the problem with Asia is as an alibi is that all of the alibi witnesses and all the alibi evidence surrounded with Jay. So in essence, it was, okay, the defense, we're going to create an alibi, and that alibi includes Adnan and Jay. And then after Jay flips the script and flips on Adnan, how can they then change the alibi to Asia McClain? I apologize if I'm not articulating this properly. Again, I think other people that you're following will. But that was this big moment where everyone certainly stood up and listened, because all of the sudden it was that he was finally giving a theory. Maybe not a great one, but he was giving a theory, finally. And he's saying, let's see, and this is he makes a good point, quoting Strickland. That's the Pinnacle case on ineffective assistance of counsel. When facts your clients are giving you point to one line of defense, okay? So when the facts your client is giving you point to one line of defense, you are permitted to abandon another line of defense. That's essentially what he said. And he said that Cristina Gutierrez surmised that Asia is not a weapon for the defense, it is a weakness. And then he said this issue about what's better than an alibi, a state witness being your alibi. Again, I hope I got everything. And, he concluded with saying how all these people were fighting for him, and he had his whole audience, and everybody's grandstanding during this trial. But his last words essentially were, this is a fight that should not end in victory. And talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.